Hi, my name is Michelle Seehafer, and I live in Fairfield here for the past 5 to 6 years. And I graduated from MIU last summer. And with me here today is Craig Deininger, a former professor of mine in the writing department at MIU. And here I am with him today to share his presence with the community on how he spreads his gifts and his knowledge with the MIU community in writing. So here's Craig.
Thanks, Michelle. Good to see you.
And so to start out, Craig, is there anything that you want to tell me in the community about yourself and your position at MIU?
Oh, yeah, maybe briefly. So it's my 5th year now at MIU, completing my 5th year, so that's a long time, in my book at least. And it's a pretty good deal because I just get to keep going deeper and deeper into the specialties that interest me. I get to work in what I love. I think that's a rare thing these days for a lot of people. So in theory, Mark, I keep getting better at it. We'll see though as time passes, but I definitely feel like I'm in deeper relationship with the content that I specialize in now than 5 years ago.
So aside from being a writing professor, what parts of your position at MIU do you love the most? What are you bringing to MIU that is unique to the writing community?
I think most of all would probably be incorporated with the depth psychology training I had in my mythology program. And the reason being is that it just adds a few more perspectives to the creative writing. It deepens it because it adds the perspective of, well, why am I doing this? For example, which any creative writer shouldn't think about when they creatively write, in my opinion, but whatever, we have our processes. And then also the deepening that I think comes from the mythology. These deep, that was redundant, deep twice, anyway. Anyway, these narratives that have been around for centuries and in the theories reveal the workings of the human psyche and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting to reflect while creating. Would be a shorter answer to that question. That's in the ballpark.
Totally. So with Craig sharing with us all of this information on psychology and mythology, I forgot to mention that he had attended Naropa, where he studied psychology, and he also studied mythology. So he's bringing in those aspects of his education into his writing career with MIU as a professor, where he's involving psychology and mythology as well as archetypes too.
Oh yeah.
But I would love to share with the community for them to know, like, what is your form? What is your preferred form of writing?
Yeah, the preferred form is poetry. Though I really don't know what poetry is anymore. I've studied it too much, been in it too much, and now I see it wherever I look. My driver's manual in the glove box right now. I've started to question, what's poetry? Oh, because there's a line break, because some words rhyme, or we're attentive to meter and all that sort of thing. There's something else going on. I just find that poetry, for whatever reason, arises in every genre of writing. At least for me, it does. And I guess I would give it the attribute of, again, depth. I'm kind of a depth junkie these days. I just like to see how far down things can go. but there's something about when it comes through, maybe that level of feeling that's activated, possibly a magnitude of experience from the language, that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm perplexed by the whole thing on what poetry is now. But long story short, poetry.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Actually, that reminds me of the classes that I took with Craig at MIU. There was one called Alchemy of Imagination, and he ended up incorporating some depth psychology into our writing with our assignments, as well as another class that I did with him. There's more to the title of the class, but it was something along the lines of spirit and poetry. And I really enjoyed taking Craig's classes because he challenged me to kind of let go of like thinking too much whenever I did write poetry, and it was hilarious. Like out of the time that I spent writing poetry, one of Craig's favorite poems that I wrote was the one that I barely put any thought into. And I was so frustrated. I was so irritated that was the one. And I'm like, what the heck? But I guess there's, we all have our own unique take on poetry and our approach to it, especially when we're learning more about it as well. And I guess Craig must have just felt, this, the lack of effort that I put into that poem. So.
If only everything worked that way in this life, right?
Right.
But to that point, for some reason, I at least I've found that the best poems are the ones that come the most easily. These sometimes, it's just a godsend. An hour and a half of scribbling, and then half an hour of going through and done. And they just drop into your lap, that spontaneity, and that it's just so natural.
It's like the muse is working through you.
I think so, and it's so rare for me because I'm a manipulator. Don't on the level of my part, it's like, oh my goodness, how can I force this into sounding better? And I'm not capturing the essence, and what must I do? And by chasing that and trying to meticulously cram everything together and cut and paste and move around to make a discovery, there's a point in that process where, yes, I can take a mediocre poem and make it better through my work and crafting, which I kind of gave the pejorative manipulation, but whatever. And then it's not that. And then there comes a point, though, where it becomes so dense, it's like I've sterilized the life in the thing, because I've cut and pasted. It's like Frankenstein now. It's all pieced together, and it doesn't have any organicness, organicity. I don't know, a word like that.
It's not natural.
Not natural. That's it. That's it. Oh.
Huh.
Anyways, yours was like that. So it was just like pure, honest, in the moment.
Yeah, I guess hearing you express poetry and tearing it apart and putting it back together in that way kind of reminds me of like how you approach writing and poetry when it comes to psychology. So I'm curious to share with the community, how do you integrate principles of psychology into your writing classes?
Yeah, carefully. But not. I should back up just for a second, just put a context on it. I got into the Jungian and depth psychology because it came with my studies in myth at Pacifica. And I was not fond of the psychology part. I said, oh, are you serious? You got to say psychology? I don't want that. I just want to get into the myth. And then a month into the psychology, I was hooked. And so in that context, when I come in, what I like to do is I like to find the value of what it is that I'm doing in the creative writing. Like, it was a surprise to me. I didn't need that before, but now I know afterwards how valuable making art is, because I've seen the psychology of it or the findings of those who have done the psychology in it. I'm just lucky. I just read the books and they did the work for me. So that's easy. But I never realized it was just enlightening and has improved my relationship to my creative writing and its quality, because now I understand why I do it. So the first reason that I do it is it's healing. It's being immersed in one's art, whatever that art is, so it should be poetry, but whatever, there's something about that heals, or that gives me a perspective on life without having to think about re-perspectivizing my relationship to all the problems that are up close to me and that I maybe can't work or see through. I can have a rough day dealing with all these variables and then sit down and work poetry for 2 hours, and it can be mediocre, lackluster stuff even, but for some reason, you know, I come out of that and I'm renewed. It's like, wow, I have perspective now. I'm further away from those things I was entangled with. And plus the whole creative expression, which, you know, having a connection to where a new idea or image emerges from within the depths of my psyche or soul, literally, because the Greek word psyche, it translates into soul, and that's a whole nother interesting area. But to have, I believe, this is just my thought, that being in the art is training in having dialogue, or at least communicating or exploring or being in contact with that part of my, so far inside of myself, that creative content first, the incipients of that first creative content. I think it's fascinating, and the relationship with imagination is so important, having that thing, and having the being in imagination. It is now just a place it's just an entire dimension that one can wander and do whatever they want, and not. And then you get into how the beauty of the rules of the context of what's imagined, and how those rules and slopes create a force that we have to traction into, and dig down and get, you know, sinewy on it, or I don't know, feels like the kind of the right word for it, because we're co-creating this work. My ego's involved, my ego's out of the picture, it's back in, it's back out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a dance between the two. Actually, what you were just sharing with me reminded me when I was in your Alchemy of Imagination class. And one of the assignments that Craig gave us, I believe it was to like take like a dream and to like dig into that dream by like talking to like either an object or an individual or like an animal or whatever was in that dream, and talk to it. And create a dialogue between oneself and the character or the object that was in the dream that really stood out to oneself. And for myself, I recall not being able to come up with a dream, because I wasn't dreaming, like, you know, experiencing that deep REM sleep during that time of my education. And so you ended up working with me on that and allowed me, you know, accepted me to work with something that I was feeling inside, and my need to like work through like those challenging feelings that I was having with myself. And at that time, it was the feeling of being stuck. And I believe it was something along the lines of me feeling stuck with my creativity. And so like I had a conversation with that feeling, and it gave me the image of a piece of gum like on the bottom of somebody's shoe, and I was able to like talk to that feeling and like explore the feelings of that feeling. And it felt really interesting to me, kind of like mystical, because I was like having a conversation with a deeper part of myself. And so I I want to thank you, for being a part of my writing experience at MIU.
Well, it's great having you in the class. Well, you already know that. She has just brought up all the best content frequently. So
yeah.
And also, so I can say, when you like that act. So in the Jungian tradition, it's called active imagination, blah blah blah. But outside, regardless of who it comes from or what it is, just the personifying something. An energy within ourselves, so that we get it out of being contained in our ego and, oh, yeah, I got you inside of me, and instead you're outside now, and now I can have a more objective perspective and can start dialoguing. And then as soon as I speak to it, an object or a feeling or a dream character, which my ego, by the way, did not select,
Right.
which makes dreams very interesting, and fantasies for that reason too. And then when I speak to it, then there's a place where that activates the imagination and a response will come. It feels weird at first, but as people notice with this, but after a while, there's an imagined response. It's like, oh, I'm just imagining it. It's like, exactly, how strange that exactly that came. Why did that come, and where did it come from?
Right.
That kind of thing.
those healing aspects that you were expressing earlier. Yeah. So I want to just say that Craig has been a very influential force and a catalyst in my life when it comes to becoming a creative writer and strengthening that part of myself that I didn't realize that I had a passion for before I even took his classes, because his classes were my first experience when it came to writing. So thank you so much, Craig, for meeting with me today and having this dialogue with me. And I also would like to mention, too, that in Fairfield, Craig is currently doing a workshop at the Fairfield Library called Poets Forge, where you can write poetry and bring it in and have other people who write poetry to discuss it with and share it with and receive some praise or maybe even a little bit of criticism, but that's never to be taken, too hard, because when it comes to poetry, you're your own critic, and anybody who criticizes your poetry, they don't really have a say in how you want your poem to be finalized. So, and on the note of Craig's workshop, what days of the month, or when is it?
Yeah, second Saturday of each month at 2:30.
Okay.
Come with a copy of the poem for everybody, so 10 copies, and we try to be gentle. Sometimes we're not. It depends on the spirit of it, but at the end, everybody knows that I am not my poem.
Right.
At least that, well, I can't say that for sure, but for me at least, and again, the advantage of stepping out of it, the honor of being its creator is ample.
Right.
I don't have to be it at the same time.
Totally. So, that's the beauty of it, is just coming and playing with the words that you put on page and created, just to share with others, because really, isn't that what life is about, just creating and sharing. So thank you so much for being here, and
my pleasure.
Yeah.